Sometimes you just have to keep digging. Hey, everybody, this is Pastor Justin Walker with The Whole Truth. We're going through the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation. I want you to come along with me. So do that by grabbing a Bible and turning it open to Genesis chapter 26. And while you're doing that, don't forget, hit the subscribe button or the follow button and get those alerts. Every morning, we're coming out with another video. We're going a little deeper into the Bible, a little further into the Word. And that's because God's Word has the answers. So Genesis 26 and verse 12, we're in the story of Isaac now. Genesis all the way through Abraham. Abraham has had his promised son, Isaac. We're now focusing in on Isaac. Isaac was 60 years old when he finally had his sons, Jacob and Esau. And then they're old enough that they're hunting and becoming men. So we're assuming that Isaac at this point is somewhere between 75 and 80 years old, maybe even older than 75 or 80. He could be 85 years old by this point. We're not certain completely, but we've got a pretty good speculation that he's, in his upper years. He's past 80 years old probably. And so here he is as an 80-year-old man. He had made the sin of his father. He lied about his wife, Rebecca. He had said that she was his sister. That's where the story came off of. He got caught, but he's still going to dwell in that same land. And so he had tried to move out of his land because of a famine. I hope I've caught you up on the story. This is Genesis 26 and verse 12. Let's read this whole story and then go over it. Then Isaac sowed in the land. That's the land he moved to, the land of the Philistines under Abimelech. Isaac sowed in that land, and he reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. In verse 14, he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and great numbers of servants. So the Philistines envied him. In verse 15, now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. And they had filled them with earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are mightier than we." Then Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. He called them by the names which his father had called them. Also Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of running water. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they quarreled with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. And so he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. And so he called its name Rehoboth, because he said, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." I love what's happening in this story, because at first glance, it almost seems as if Isaac might be weak or not willing to stand up for himself, but that's not it at all. The story is that Isaac is prospering. He sowed, and the Lord gave him 100-fold return. He had servants. He had flocks. His flocks were doing well. They were grazing well. They were eating well. They were mating well, and they were reproducing well. He had lots of flocks, and he had servants. Lots of servants. And he had plenty of resources, land, servants, money, flocks, plenty of it. So much so that in verse 14, we see the Philistines, who he's living among, they become jealous. And so they tell him to go away. They did this by stopping up his wells. What an awful thing to do to a herdsman. And in that area of the world where in some times of the year, the well is the only source of water. They went and took dirt and they filled the well up. They broke down the bricks that were on the side. They stuffed dirt in the well. They stopped up his well so that he couldn't get water. And then they told him, "Go away. We don't want you here anymore. You're mightier than we are. Leave." So what's he do? In verse 17, Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar. His dad's been in Gerar. So his dad was Abraham, if I confused you there. Abraham had been in Gerar. Abraham had dug wells in Gerar. Well, the Philistines had stopped those up. So Isaac goes and he begins digging up the wells that his father had dug all those years ago. He opens those wells up, has his servants dig those wells up, and open those. And then he begins to dig again, and he ends up finding a very special type of well, a well that has running water, not still water, but running water in the well. Well, the herdsmen of the area, the Philistine herdsmen, the herdsmen of Gerar, they begin quarreling with him, saying, "That's ours. First, they were stopping him up. Now they see how valuable it is, and they go, no, that water is our water. Isaac goes to another spot, digs another well. They said, that well is ours. So Isaac gets up and goes and digs another well. And finally, they left him alone. And what is Isaac's response to all of that? The Lord has made room for us, and now we're going to prosper in the land. What we don't see him doing is fighting for his cause, fighting for what was rightfully his. He could have said, my father dug those wells, but he didn't. He could have said, I paid for this land, but he didn't. He could have said, I'm wealthier than all of you, but he didn't. We don't see Isaac quarreling or fighting or arguing his point or trying to even prove his point. They stopped up as well. He left. They quarreled with him. He moved on. Why? Because he was weak? No, because the Lord was blessing him. The Lord had blessed him. He didn't have anything to fight over because the Lord was taking care of him. What Isaac was demonstrating was faith in God, that God was taking care of him. As a matter of fact, that's what comes next in the story. Look in verse 23. Then he went up from there to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night. He dug this well. He said, the Lord has made room for us, and the Lord's now appearing to him. And he says, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there. Now he's in Beersheba. He's pitching his tent in Beersheba, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. See, he didn't argue with the Philistines. Instead, he trusted the Lord. He dug the wells, and the Lord kept blessing him. And now the Lord has appeared to him and said, don't fear. Don't worry about these Philistines. They're not who to worry about. Don't fear. I am on your side. And so look at what happens next. And then we're going to make one practical point and we'll get out of here. Look at what happens in verse 26. Then Abimelech came to him. Abimelech's the guy that said, go away. Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzah, one of his friends, and Phicol, the commander of his army. And Isaac said to them, why have you come to me, since you hate me and have sent me away from you? But they said, we have certainly seen that the Lord is with you. Why did Isaac keep digging and keep moving on? Because the Lord was blessing him. He didn't need to fight with the Philistines. He just needed to trust the Lord. Well, he says, I can see that the Lord is with you. That's Abimelech talking. And so we said, I'm in the middle of verse 28 there. So we said, let there now be an oath between you and us. Let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, since we have not touched you, and since we have done nothing to you but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now blessed of the Lord. And so he made them a feast, and they ate and drank, and they arose early in the morning and swore an oath to one another. And Isaac sent them away and departed from him in peace. And it came to him, and it came to pass in the same day that Isaac's servants came to him and told him that the well which they had dug, and they had said, we have found water. They said, the well we have dug, we have found water. And so he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. I love the way this story ends. Abimelech has to recognize that Isaac is blessed. He comes to Isaac, he goes, we've done you no harm. Well, they kept stopping up his wells. They told him to go away after they stopped up his well. So much so that Isaac was under the impression that they hated him. And check this out. Isaac still didn't argue. He didn't make his point. He had plenty of points to make, but he didn't make them. Instead, he was focused on the Lord. Here's what I want to tell you to do today. I don't know what's going on in your life. I know what's going on in my life. And I can tell you this. If the Lord's calling you to do something, keep digging. If the Lord's blessing you, you keep digging. You keep going, if you will. Don't let other people get in your way. The Philistines tried to stop it. Did Isaac stop digging? Did he just say, well, it's not worth it. Let's move near the river and stop digging for the wells? No. Isaac knew that they needed a well, and so he dug for a well. They fought over that one, so he went to another place and he tried again. It's almost as if, like the story, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And I love this part where he's worshiping God. He builds this altar. God makes him the promise and says, I'm with you. I'm going to bless you. He builds an altar and he worships the Lord. And then what did he do? He dug a well. Abimelech comes to him. And when Abimelech comes, he says, we see that you're prospering. We want to make an oath with you. Isaac makes the oath with him. And when Isaac gets done making the oath, what do his servants come to him and say? We've dug another well, and that well has produced water, and we found water again. And so they rejoiced, and they called the name Beersheba. That's the reason the city is called Beersheba, because of what Isaac has done. He didn't worry about what other people were doing. He was focused on his relationship with the Lord. So when it comes to your spiritual relationship, forget what other people are saying. You worry about you. Keep your eyes on your own paper. You worry about what God's calling you to do and keep digging. That's what Isaac did, and what an example it was for us. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll see you tomorrow as we dive into Genesis chapter 27. I'll see you then.